Good evening and welcome to the Week in Review. I'm Paris Schutz. We'll be joined by our Week in Review guests in just a moment. But first, some of today's top stories. Local school officials are reassuring parents that schools are safe following a spate of threats on the social media platform TikTok. CPS and other districts sent messages saying there are no credible threats after troubling TikTok viral campaigns promoting violence at schools went public today. At the same time, the school districts say they're conducting threat assessments and taking all precautions to keep students and teachers safe. We'll have more on this in just a moment. A slight dip in COVID cases today after the state saw nearly 12,000 new cases on Thursday. That's the highest daily state total of the year. Illinois reported more than 10,700 new cases today with 52 deaths. This comes as hospitalizations are rising and Cook County public health officials are urging all businesses to require proof of vaccination for indoor entry. Also today, the CDC recommended schools employ a COVID test-to-stay policy modeled after a program created right here in Illinois. And we'll have more on this in just a bit as well. Governor J.B. Pritzker signs a bill repealing parental notification for abortion in Illinois. That means the law will not compel pregnant teenagers to notify a parent or legal guardian before getting an abortion. The action was met with pushback from several Republican lawmakers who decry the fact that it strips parents of their right to know if a child is seeking an abortion. The Parental Notification Act had been on the books in Illinois since 1995. And now to our Week in Review panel. Joining us are Sarah Schulte of ABC 7 News, Alex Nitkin of the Daily Line, David Shaper of NPR, and Laura Washington of the Chicago Sun-Times and ABC 7 News. Let's get right at it. Alex Nitkin, it feels like deja vu all over again. 12,000 cases yesterday. Do you believe it's just a matter of time before Mayor Lightfoot announces a mandatory vaccination policy for anyone that wants to enjoy an indoor activity in Chicago?
You know, we really don't know exactly what Mayor Lightfoot is going to do. You know, a couple of weeks ago when the New York City announced a similar kind of vaccination mandate for all employers, she was asked about this and said, no, we're not there yet. But as recently as Wednesday, she said, stay tuned. There are some other mitigations we might be announcing, so we'll just have to watch. You know, it's important to note just today or yesterday, we got back above 1,000 daily average new cases in Chicago. We haven't seen numbers like that since this past January. And you mentioned the Cook County Health Advisory. It's really starting to feel from public health officials like we're in the hours before a hurricane, just sort of telling everyone to batten down the hatches and, at least for the next couple of weeks, try and avoid congregate settings and, of course, get a booster for anyone who hasn't.
It certainly does feel like that, Sarah Schulte. You've got a record number of cases this year, and the Omicron variant still really hasn't spread its way around Chicago quite yet. It's a faster spreading variant. Then you got all the gatherings over the holidays. You spoke with Dr. Fauci today. Is this a perfect storm right now?
It absolutely is. And I think that Dr. Fauci says you have to take a look at what's going on in New York right now. And probably what's going on in New York right now is probably going to be replicated around the country before we know it. As you know, in New York, cases have tripled, I think, in the past week. Broadway shows are being canceled. And they are fully expecting similar scenarios in places around the country.
And what about CPS, Laura Washington? We mentioned the CDC recommending a test-to-stay policy. Is there a protocol in place for CPS?
That's unclear. CPS hasn't been as forthcoming as you would expect, given what we've just been talking about in terms of it seems like the burgeoning number of cases. So what I've been hearing when I hear parents talk about this is that they don't feel that they're getting enough information, that they don't feel that there's any consistency in the policy in terms of how it's being implemented across the board.
Yeah, the only thing, I just talked to the CEO yesterday, and the only thing that they're doing right now is they're sending home 150,000 tests to students in schools with low vaccination rates and high number of cases. And the interesting thing about this is they are expecting these students to take the test all on the same day, December 28th, and then expecting their families to drop them off at a FedEx box the same day. CPS is supposed to announce more drop-off locations that may be a little bit more convenient than a FedEx box, but that is the only thing they have right now in place. And, you know, I asked the CEO, I'm like, do you fully expect all these parents to actually try to find a FedEx box? to drop these tests off all on the same day. So it will be interesting to see the compliance of those 150,000 tests.
It certainly seems like a coming hurricane here that is catching a lot of public officials off guard. David Shaper, knowing what's happening, would it cause you to perhaps rethink holiday plans as millions and millions of people are planning to get together in close settings?
Well, I definitely think a lot of people should reevaluate their plans. I mean, large groups gathering indoors, it's getting colder out, and that means, people are going to be wanting to be indoors as opposed to outdoors. I think last year we had a kind of a warmer Christmas, so people could kind of spread out and go get outside a little bit. But, people have been itching to get together in a big family gathering. We saw Thanksgiving was kind of the first burst. And I think a lot of people were thinking until the Omicron variant, became known, finally, this Christmas we could have a normal Christmas. And so it really could, we could see a big increase in cases. And I should also note that airlines, airports, and all the travel analysts I've been talking to are expecting big crowds at the airports and crowded planes. People want to travel. They're going to be traveling for these holidays, probably for the full 2-week period, and that's an opportunity for this virus to spread even further.
And again,
well, I think, Paris,
go ahead,
I think that David really nails it when he talks about people are itching to get out. I think there's just massive COVID fatigue, even though Omicron it's been made very clear that Omicron is highly contagious and it's blowing up. People are just to the point where they're hitting the wall, and particularly around the holidays, they're just not willing, or in fact, they're refusing to hunker down for another second year. Holidays, especially with the holidays coming, and it's very hard to convince people, especially people who feel like we got vaccinated twice, we even got the boosters, many of us, and we still can't have a semi-normal life. People are just unwilling to accept that at this point.
And Sarah, what does Dr. Fauci say about that? I mean, you're really only protected against Omicron if you're boosted, and even then, it's really only against severe disease, correct?
Correct. I mean, you are protected with the 2 doses too. I mean, I think that we do need to stress that is that, you're definitely protected against those 2 doses. But a booster just gives you a higher level of immunity. But, they are definitely expecting a lot of breakthrough cases. But the difference is, and this is what is happening in New York City. So if there's any upside in New York City, what they're saying is they're not getting as many hospitalizations because of all these breakthrough cases. It's really just a cold or a mild illness. It's not sending people to the hospital. So, from that standpoint, vaccinations definitely work. I mean, what they're really concerned about are as he said today, the 50 to 60 million unvaccinated Americans. And in this Chicago alone, there's 650,000 residents that are still unvaccinated, and they're expecting an extremely dark January for those people with the Omicron variant.
And for context, New York City alone saw something like 20,000 new cases. Compare that to Illinois as an entire state, 11,000, which is a very high number for Illinois. So New York is seeing an explosion right there. Another grim statistic, Laura Washington, the city surpasses 800 homicides, the most since the mid-90s. I mean, first of all, did you ever expect the city would see those kinds of numbers again, since it had been getting used to 400, 500 per year?
Well, crime trends do go up and down, and we've had dark days like this, as you noted in the past. I think the difference here is that we're not only do we have rampant crime, but unfortunately the crime has become very personal. It's very street level. It's happening on Michigan Avenue. It's happening in the neighborhoods, on side streets, in the middle of the day, and I think that has taken the attitude and taken the fear of crime to a whole other level. And then when you see a Chicago Police Department that seems to be trying to do its best, but their response has been basically canceled officers' holidays, cancel their days off, flood the streets with them. When you see that happening and you still see the crime continuing to rise, I think it creates a lot of fear and a lot of feeling like, we have nowhere to go and we don't have any solutions.
And the Senate held a hearing in Chicago this week on this. Seems like still no new or concrete solutions here. Let's move on to some other city council news this week. Alder people approved a nearly $3 million settlement with Anjanette Young for the botched police raid of the social worker's home. Here's what Mayor Lightfoot had to say after that vote.
Unanimously, which rarely happens on matters of settlements, the City Council affirmed the agreement that had been reached with Ms. Young and her council to pay her $2.9 million.
And also this week, Alex Nitkin, the law firm Jones Day released a report that the mayor commissioned about how her office handled the aftermath of Anjanette Young. How did that report go?
Yeah, I think the real headline from the report was that the mayor did not intentionally conceal any information about the Anjanette Young raid after it had happened, which was, I think, the subject of a lot of criticism that she had handled, that she had taken over, whether she had known about it at the time that she had, fired her corporation counsel. It did expose a lot of different cracks, flaws, miscommunications, the things that we see in a lot of sort of watchdog reports about the administration or about the city, that obviously that the Chicago Department of Law had been sort of overzealous in all of the sanctions that it was pursuing against Ms. Young and her attorney just for trying to get access to the footage of her own experience and then expose that to the world. So it was a little bit of a mixed bag. It exposed a lot of the flaws in the systems that led to this in the first place, but basically, overall, did not find any kind of intentional concealment or malice.
It also exposed the fissure between the city's former top lawyer, Mark FLesner, and Mayor Lightfoot. The two of them had been allies, and then FLesner this week wrote a scathing editorial calling the mayor petty, saying that her term has been a failure. What's behind that rift?
Right. I mean, the mayor was asked about this week, and she said basically that she had fired or asked technically for his resignation last year because she had lost all faith in him related to this investigation, in particular related to the sort of interplay between city attorneys and Ms. Young and her attorney, that the law department had been trying to essentially retaliate against Ms. Young for trying to get this information, and that he was essentially disparaging her in public. And she said that she couldn't stand for that and had lost his trust and sort of cut him loose. I think she didn't really speak specifically to the whole, kitchen sink of criticism that she levied against him, that he levied against her rather, about, dealing with police and schools and all of that. But it's clearly just, like we've seen in a lot of situations with this administration and this mayor, people being cut loose and then having a lot of, grievances and gripes that they come back and share later.
Right, rubbing some people the wrong way. Okay, also this week, sports betting is approved at places like Wrigley, the United Center, etc. David Shaper, are we going to anticipate you at one of these venues betting on whether or not the pitcher rolls the ball onto the mound in between innings or something like that?
Yeah, I think I'll be rolling the dice on whether or not it's a strike or a ball. I mean, it's kind of funny because I think of years ago when people used to just be throwing cash around, betting on every pitch out the bleachers in both Sox Park and at Wrigley Field, and bringing this out into the open, I think is. It's been that dirty little secret for forever that people have been gambling on sports, having it legal now, having it online now, having these betting parlors at the ballparks and at the other stadiums. I think it's just a natural progression. I don't think the city could have stopped this steamroller, and it's going to be interesting to see how closely it's regulated, where things might go awry. If it actually affects the play on the field, which I think is only probably a matter of time, but it's something that's here to stay, and I think the city just wants to cash in on it.
Just ask Pete Rose. I mean, that might be very tempting if he were managing or playing in this era right now. Also with casinos, Alex Nitkin, the City Council heard more about the 5 proposals. Let's take a look at the map of where some of these proposed casinos would go. Did we learn anything new about these proposals? Does anyone have a leg up?
I don't know if anyone has a leg up. I think that we saw a lot of, as you're probably seeing now, a lot of very flashy presentations. I think that one had pitched it as sort of the new, Eiffel Tower of Chicago that would be in the McCormick Place Lakeside Center. What we did saw that I think was a little bit interesting was that they were trying to sort of take some digs at each other to give themselves a leg up. We saw, for example, Rush Street Gaming, which is a little bit more established, was saying like, we don't need on-the-job training. We're not novices here, which was a knock at Bally's, the East Coast company that had submitted 2 of its own proposals. And Bally's said, well, we don't have all these locations. We can put all of our focus and our attention right here in Chicago. So we saw a little bit of that jockeying. We also saw some interesting, comment from the public saying, well, I'm concerned about how much this is going to do for the city. I'm concerned about traffic. And it's really an indication of the next stage of this. It's going to have to get through the city council, and it's going to have to make it through, the public lens of neighbors and people who are wondering whether they want to live near something.
And a decision on this is due sometime early next year. Let's move on to some state politics. Billionaire Ken Griffin made a splash this week when there were rumors floating that he's ready to give hundreds of millions of dollars out for anyone to take on J.P. Pritzker. And a name that emerged was Aurora Mayor Richard Irvin. Laura Washington, tell us about Richard Irvin.
Richard Irvin is in his second term as Aurora Mayor. He's said to be fairly popular and respected as a mayor. He's been very active and is an advocate on fighting COVID. He's said to be, I haven't met him in person, but he's said to be charismatic. He's African American, comes from a poor background, has military background. So he could be someone that could look very good to a Ken Griffin. As you said, Ken Griffin is said to be planning on spending big time money. He's already said he really wants to take on J.B. Pritzker and put all of his might behind that. One figure that's been thrown around is up to $300 million, which would even give a J.B. Pritzker a run for his money. So Irvin appears to be in the running. He's denying that he's interested right now. He's already denied it. He already had denied it earlier this year that he was interested in running. But you know how that goes with politics. But minds can change very quickly, and I don't expect there's going to be any announcement until early next year.
Lines can change quickly, and parties can change really quickly because, as I understand, Irvin has voted in Democratic primaries, and I've interviewed Irvin before. His positions on a lot of issues, social issues, tended to be more in line with the Democratic Party. Would that make it difficult for him to get through a Republican primary?
It would certainly be red meat for the other 4 declared Republican candidates who are already out there. I'm sure they're not going to lay off that. And yes, the Chicago Sun-Times, Rachel Hinton reported the other day that I think he's voted more often than not in the last 5 years. He's only voted Republican once, and he does have fairly moderate progressive issues in terms of his position. So that again, that's going to be fodder for his opponents.
And also, we have $300 million behind you. I guess you can maybe quickly change positions.
You can erase your past and buy new positions. And Sarah, also this week, Governor Pritzker had to tamp down some rumors that he would be a contender should President Biden choose not to run in 2024. He got on a couple of lists there. You think it's a coincidence his name appeared on those lists, or are people close to him making some calls to some national people saying, hey, why don't we talk about Pritzker?
Well, as you know, everybody knows, nothing's a coincidence, right? No, I think they're floating his name out there and seeing, like it goes in politics. You get a little publicity, somebody throws your name out there, you deny you're going to run, you just want to see how it's going to fly and how it's going to stick.
And it doesn't hurt either, Sarah. No. Even if you're not serious, even if you have no plans, you want to be mentioned, especially the national media, as a possible presidential contender. And even if he's not going to run if Joe Biden runs, obviously, but even if he didn't run this time, he's set up very well for next time.
So maybe it would even help him in Illinois.
I believe this rumor was in the New York Times, correct?
Yeah, it was.
The New York Times and CNN, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But it might help him in his race for re-election in Illinois, giving him the appearance of more gravitas or something like that. Let's move on to the tragic storms that ravaged through downstate and Kentucky last weekend. David, you spent the week in Kentucky. Just give us a sense of the scope of the devastation there.
You know, I've covered quite a few of these, Paris, over the years, and I don't know that I've seen devastation quite this bad. This is just it was such a powerful storm. It was on the ground for well over 200 miles, something like maybe even 250 miles when you add in across the Mississippi and Arkansas and through a little bit of Tennessee before it just stormed right through Kentucky. The path went right through this small city, Mayfield, about 10,000 people. Homes were just shredded, just ripped apart, if not completely flattened. And a lot of people just lost everything. And it's going to be really hard for these small towns in Western Kentucky and this small city to recover from this. So many people didn't have insurance. So many people are low income to begin with and living paycheck to paycheck. To talk about saving up any money to rebuild is really impossible. You had two of the biggest employers in town, both the candle factory that's gotten a lot of attention and a chicken processing plant that were flattened. You know, not to talk about the loss of life there, but you know, some folks may have lost their livelihood as well. And it was such a powerful storm, such incredible devastation, and folks who really didn't need this sort of you know, smackdown, if you will. It's a really difficult thing for Kentucky.
The president did visit some of those towns in Kentucky. Do you get a sense that there will be sufficient federal relief to help some of these homeowners, business owners rebuild?
You know, again, I've covered a lot of these disasters in the past, and I have. This is the first time I've heard people praising the word FEMA, the acronym, as opposed to cursing it. You know, FEMA was there right away, starting with search and rescue teams that were deployed before the paperwork even got processed to send those teams in there. So they had the federal urban search and rescue teams going through the mountains of debris, and especially at that one candle factory. I saw FEMA teams walking just through the streets, going from, you know, the remnants of one house to another as people were out trying to clean out and pick up what they could, find whatever salvageable belongings they could. They're talking to people, engaging them and saying, here's the process. Here, you know, handing leaflets. Here's the websites to go to. You know, make sure you check in. Make sure you call this number. And by the time I left, I think even by late Thursday, there was already some money going out from FEMA to individuals to help them with at least, you know, some you know, primary expenses, some buying necessities, food, water, and getting some temporary shelter.
David, we also have to talk about what happened in downstate Edwardsville, that Amazon warehouse half collapsing, 6 people reported dead. Yeah. What do you think an OSHA investigation might uncover?
Well, I think the OSHA investigation there, and it's similar to OSHA started an investigation with this candle factory in Mayfield, Kentucky, to see if employees were being told not to leave. What kind of instructions did they get once they knew that the tornado was bearing down? Did they have adequate shelter in the building? Could they go somewhere where they could hunker down and be safe? The governor of Kentucky, was talking about how just incredibly powerful the storm. Wasn't sure if any instructions would have made a difference. But, the building in Edwardsville seems a little bit different. If you look at the buildings around it, they're standing. And this one is just like chopped in half. And there's a lot of questions being raised about the quality of construction, the building standards, that a lot of these warehouses that are popping up all over the country, especially outside of big cities like St. Louis, where Edwardsville is, these buildings are going up quick. What kind of standards are they being held to? And what
meanwhile,
kind of storms?
I'll throw this out to anybody. You're not hearing much from Jeff Bezos, who was, I think, talking about one of his space rockets this week. And anyone feel free to chime in, but is that a little tone deaf here?
Absolutely. Completely tone deaf. I mean, it's amazing to me, but my opinion.
I think it's probably an opinion that's a non-controversial opinion and shared. Yeah. Another sticky situation this week, Alex Nitkin, a longtime alderperson who is federally indicted, Carrie Austin, she collapsed at the city council meeting. Any update on her status?
That's right. She was slumping in her chair. There was sort of a medical emergency. Everyone was cleared out of the chamber. She was taken to the hospital. And as far as we know now, she has been cleared and she's okay. She participated this morning in a city council virtual committee hearing. And, her colleagues were there and happy to see her there. Interestingly, at the same time, there was a hearing in her ongoing indictment. And her attorney was saying, she's in such poor health. I don't know if she could make it through a criminal case. And yet at the same time, she was, participating in city council business. So it seems like she's okay. Obviously, everyone pulling for her, but she continues to have these legal matters she's going to have to work through.
All right. Well, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. Our thanks to Sarah Schulte, Alex Nitkin, David Shaper, and Laura Washington. Thank you all so much. And that is our show for this Friday night. Don't forget you can get Chicago Tonight and the Week in Review streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. And be sure to join us tomorrow night at 6 for Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, and then immediately after that, Chicago Tonight, Black Voices at 6:30. And then we're back at 7 o'clock all next week. And a note before we go, our Week in Review program is off next Friday for the holidays, but will return the following week on December 31st, New Year's Eve, with a special look back at 2021. And now for the Week in Review, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy, stay safe, have a great weekend.
Closed captioning is made possible by Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm which is proud to honor founder and senior partner Robert